truth or anything along those lines. So,
hey, Brian, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Woohoo!
Oh, sweet.
It worked that time. Okay, I'm sorry about that, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Yes, sir. We are on Talking Hoops with my guy Brian here. I cannot wait for this segment. Brian, let's go ahead and get right into it. I want to first talk about your Twitter fame, for better or for worse. You can talk about whatever you want on that, because I think you have great stuff on there. Your new Twitter, of course, is B Oringher NBA. And tell me if I'm saying that right.
No, you got it perfect, actually. What I said last time, but yeah, no, my initial account, Scout with Brian, was up to about 16,000 followers, and then was permanently banned with no explanation, no real appeal. So it's pretty crazy. I've got some theories why, but I know I wasn't for everybody. I certainly had a few mistakes, a few controversies, but overall, I think a lot of people got the message. A lot of people liked and understood the account, but the people that didn't were very vocal and a very large cancel culture type deal, and they worked really hard to try to run me out of there. So glad to be back on there in some capacity, but yeah, pretty crazy that you can have 16,000 followers and be permanently banned without without a shred of reasoning or anything.
So, what's crazy about this is not to pile on this, but one guy I've interviewed before, Sports Talk Joke, aka Barry McCockner, has been banned so many times, but he's taken the route that you've done, which is YouTube, and you've got 9.32 thousand subscribers on. And last time I checked, I was watching a video this morning on the Nuggets overtime game last night. How has YouTube and even Patreon helped you out?
It's been great. It's a great community on YouTube of really diehard basketball fans. And Patreon obviously lets me get even a little more to the diehard of the diehards. So yeah, it's been cool to even without the Twitter, still have a pretty big community on YouTube, and been trying to do more for them. But yeah, it's wild that you got fans all over the world. I think I've got fans in just about every continent covered, who are really hardcore basketball fans. And so, yeah, it's a great avenue, especially as Twitter, cracks down at times on some of the speech. It's nice to have some different outlets.
Yeah, you mentioned basketball, and it's a huge worldwide sport. I want to briefly touch on you were a 7-year NBA staffer and spent 4 years traveling with the Wizards. Explain your time in the NBA and how instrumental that was for you.
Yeah, I spent 6 years total with the Wizards. Like you said, 4 years I was their head video coordinator. So that's,
Wow.
obviously most famously the position that Eric Spoelstra started
I was
in.
Eric Spoelstra over here.
Yeah, no, it's I tell people it was almost like being an assistant to the coaches. You're in every coaches meeting, you're in the locker room for
Wow.
pregame, halftime, postgame. You're leading, showing the film to the team. You're doing a ton of the game planning type stuff, putting the scouting reports together. So it was really, really hands on. It allowed me to have a tremendous background in the game, and really know a ton about the X's and O's from working with 3 different head coaches and so many different assistants: Paul Pierce, John Wall, Bradley Beal. Lots of legends of the game, obviously. Spent a year as a regional advanced scout for the Hawks and Raptors, doing some of that. So yeah, overall it was 7 years in the NBA, a couple of years for the Hall of Famer Gary Williams at Maryland.
Wow.
All in all, making about 10 years in high level basketball. So it was a great experience, and definitely wouldn't trade it for anything.
I hate to be this guy that puts certain men over other men, but it's got to be kind of surreal looking back that you were in NBA locker rooms with some guys who make pretty good money, I'd say.
Yeah, it was it's quite the culture shock at times when you're making your mid less than 6-figure salary, and then they're
Right.
making that every second or two. But yeah, no, I mean, they were all, honestly, almost all of them were great guys. I have nothing but respect. Paul obviously is has gotten some more of the controversy on the media side, but he was
Right.
an unbelievable leader, unbelievable locker room guy. You learn so much from being around him, and I was lucky, like I said, to be around some great vets. I mean, Nene, Trevor Ariza, Emeka
Nene,
Okafor, Andre Miller. Some really really good longtime NBA players. And yeah, it was an awesome experience.
that's awesome. And Brian, I again appreciate you coming on. Bryan Oringher, formerly known as Scout with Brian, but still an awesome basketball junkie as well. Brian, I want to talk about some NBA current state of affairs. The Lakers' season so far has not been great. I believe we should not pull the plug on Frank Vogel yet because he did win the championship and AD has kind of been hurt. I mean, can we give the Frank Vogel a little bit of credit here? And even LeBron's been playing out of his mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not ready to pull the plug either. I mean, it's a good example of how the state of affairs in the NBA. I mean, people forget like the Heat were close to firing Eric Spoelstra. In that
Right,
first LeBron year, like things are absolutely day to day, and they can change in a second. And it sounds like things are close to imploding, and another loss or two could certainly have Vogel fired. But by the
right,
same token, you put together a 3, 4, 5 game winning streak, and then they start to climb back towards the top, and maybe people are talking about them as a legit contender again. So I agree. I mean, you can't evaluate things obviously really without AD. The Russ thing is pretty wild. I mean, he's definitely having probably his worst year overall, and
right,
the fact that he's being benched now is a really interesting subplot in addition to the Vogel. That's enough of a thing on its own, but
right.
I guess he really does kind of blame Russ for a lot of this, and it's kind of who's really at fault between the two of them. I don't
Mm,
know. I have some opinions, but again, I really want to see this team at full strength
I do
before
too.
I write them off. So
I completely agree. And with LeBron averaging 30 a game, which is what people have always wanted him to do, was take over games. I think this would be a good year to just wait and see what happens. Like, I mean, that's got to catch up to the players at some point.
yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable. I mean, what he's doing in year 19 is just obscene, and I know it's not a popular opinion at times. I mean, I've said, one on one, I take Michael Jordan. In terms of just who's the more dominant player, I take Michael Jordan. But from a
Oh my
perspective,
gosh! Go ahead.
uh,
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying from a perspective of, longevity, who had the better career. I mean, Michael Jordan was retired 5 times by now. Like
Right,
what LeBron's doing with this much mileage on him, and in year 19 is just unlike anything we'll ever see and have ever seen before. So it's unreal. But yeah, I mean that team, they don't play any defense. Losing Caruso was a massive mistake. Losing KCP, the two of them were really the only guys that could guard, and now it's just a free for all to the basket for pretty much everybody. And yeah, their defense is a mess. As great as LeBron is, he can't obviously defend like he did anymore. And yeah, they need AD back and probably another move or two, and we'll see if somehow this season could be salvaged before it's too late.
right. Aaron, why don't you ask about the Nets with the Kyrie situation?
Yeah, that was the big thing that I really wanted to kind of get his insight on with this because we talked about Kyrie yesterday, Brian, and we had differing opinions on the vaccination status and playing home games. And with KD going down, I know a lot of people, a lot of reporters, a lot of people in the media or social media are saying, "Look, this is as good a time as any for Kyrie to get vaccinated and help out his team." But I'm of the belief that, he's making a decision. I like the fact that he's sticking to his guns. What are your thoughts kind of on this situation with KD's going down, the Nets need him, but, he's made a decision.
Yeah, I'm with you, to be honest. I mean, I get obviously that from a team perspective, obviously you'd want him to be vaccinated. You certainly would help the team more by being vaccinated. But it's like you said. I mean, he's done apparently his research. He's stuck to his principles. You can disagree with his research. You can disagree with his principles, but Kevin Durant being injured doesn't change that decision. Doesn't change the research or whatever that he put into it. And again, I'm not
Agreed.
saying he's right. I mean, I'm vaccinated. I think most people should be vaccinated. But the bottom line is, Kyrie's a 30-whatever-year-old
Man,
physical specimen who's in tremendous shape, and he's of
right.
unbelievably little danger, with this virus. And yeah, to me, I think the whole thing just has never really made sense. That you've had guys like Bradley Beal, who until recently wasn't vaccinated either, and he's playing everywhere around the whole country. And you've got Kyrie, who's making the same decision and there's other guys. There's another 10 or so, at least in the NBA, who aren't vaccinated, and nobody's talking about them just because their city's law is different. So he's doing what he believes in, and again, some of the logic is. Some of the science is still not really clear, to be perfectly honest. I mean, for
Yeah.
a guy like him who's healthy, I think he's entitled to make his decision, and I think Kevin Durant or whoever being injured doesn't change his logic and his reasoning, and he's allowed to make his own decision.
100% agree with that, because you're right. Like, if playing home games and the mandates in these cities, or the home city that he plays in, isn't going to change his mind about getting vaccinated, I can't imagine Durant's injury is going to do that.
Right. And we're seeing, I mean, how many places that said, we're going to have lockdowns, we're going to have mandates. I mean, the UK to just, yesterday they dropped the whole mask mandate, the vaccine mandate. I mean, these, again, like I said about the Lakers, these things
Day to
change
day.
day to day. I mean, who knows if when more, science and studies come out, if New York at some point changes their mind. We already heard. I mean, he could play at home. The Nets could pay $100 fine or whatever and let him play at home. It's the NBA standing on their principles, or would it just being afraid of the backlash that would come with
Save
letting him
face.
play?
Yep.
But they could pay a nominal fine, and he could be playing everywhere right now. So I don't think at this point, honestly, that it's really on Kyrie.
Fair enough.
Amen.
Kyrie also, this little side point, dropped 30 last night and helped preserve a wild finish, but they did beat the Wizards, I believe. So good job for him without KD. Let's talk about Golden State Warriors. And Lord have mercy, Brian. I get they're good. I get that they've got the pieces that are coming back, but I'm not ready to write them in as the favorites right now. Maybe the betting favorites, maybe. But it's like everybody's just like, even Stephen A. Smith is like, oh, they're going to win the championship. Everything's fine. What do you think about the Golden State Warriors? Are they the favorites to you right now?
I think it's pretty much a coin flip, honestly, between them and Phoenix. I think that Western Conference Finals potentially is setting up to really be like the championship to me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd put them right next to each other. I think they're a phenomenal team, but there's some growing pains with getting Clay back up to speed and getting him back into things, which is going to happen. I mean, when you miss basically 2 full years of basketball, I mean, it's certainly not his fault, but there's going to be some growing pains along the way. Draymond's injuries been something to keep an eye on, because they're a totally different team, obviously, without him, a significantly worse team without him. And the Suns are playing phenomenal basketball too. So I think you really can't go wrong with either of them. And we also theoretically have, I think, Wiseman coming back relatively soon for the Warriors, and he's another guy who could give them a little boost, but could also change the way they play in maybe a negative way sometimes. So it's a very long season, as I know, 82 games, especially being back to that length. So we've got to see if they can survive the injury bug, and but yeah, I think they have a great chance. But I definitely wouldn't write them in or anything as champions just yet.
Right. Brian, I appreciate your time today. I want to say thank you for weathering the technical difficulties storm that we have today that usually does not happen, but we had fun with it today. Thank you so much. Anything you want to plug, anything that you want to say before you go?
No, really appreciate you guys having me, and I think you got my Twitter handle in there, and yeah, everywhere else you can just type in "Scat with Brian" on YouTube, Brian with a Y, and you'll find the Jokic video I did last night, and you'll find most of my content. So appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you so much again for coming on the show, man.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.